Indonesia's economy grew at its weakest pace in more than 3 years in the first quarter, with headwinds expected in the rest of the year stemming from global trade turmoil and declining household spending.
Southeast Asia's largest economy grew 4.87% in the first quarter from a year earlier, its slowest rate since the third quarter of 2021 and down from 5.02% in the previous quarter. Growth was roughly in line with analysts' forecasts in a Reuters poll at 4.91%. On a non-seasonally adjusted quarter-on-quarter basis, GDP contracted 0.98%, Statistics Indonesia or BPS data showed. Head of Statistics Indonesia, Amalia Adininggar Widyasanti said that in the first 3 months of 2025, household spending, which makes up over half of the country's GDP, grew 4.89% annually, down just slightly from the previous 3 months. The household spending marked the slowest pace in 5 quarters, despite higher spending during Ramadan, which fell in March this year. Spending on eating out, transportation, and communication remained strong, but other spending, such as footwear purchases, was sluggish, Amalia said in a press briefing last week. First quarter investment growth slipped to 2.12%, its lowest in 2 years. The government spending contracted, but there was an increase in the net export contribution to GDP due to slowing imports. While the GDP data suggested stable purchasing power, other indicators suggested spending by urban middle-class households was weakening, Barakukuh Mamia, Bank Central Asia's Economist, was quoted as saying by Reuters. President Prabowo Subianto, who took office last year, has pledged to lift GDP growth to 8% during his 5-year term, but is facing challenges from slowing global growth amid a trade war, as well as a weakening domestic demand and a tighter budget position. US-bound exports could also be hit by hefty tariffs in coming months, which Jakarta is looking to avert in talks with Washington. A further growth deceleration to 4.79% is expected in the current quarter on slowing household spending and the impact of trade tensions, Hosiana Situmorang, Danamon Bank's economist, said, as reported by Reuters. However, she kept Danamon's 4.8% full-year forecast, expecting improvements in the second half of 2025. Meanwhile, Coordinating Minister for Economy Airlangga Hartarto said that despite the slowdown, Indonesia's growth remained higher than peers in the group of 20 major economies, and that government spending would provide growth momentum going forward. The country's growth of 4.87% is higher than that of Malaysia of 4.4%, Singapore with 3.8%, and Spain with 2.9%. But it is far below 6.93% recorded by Vietnam. Minister Airlangga hopes the government spending will increase in the second quarter so that the quarterly economic growth will be higher. Separately, Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati expressed her optimism that the annual economic growth will reach the government's target of 5.2% this year, despite the slowdown in the first quarter. To achieve the target, the government will further accelerate spending for priority programs such as the free meal program for school students and to increase fiscal incentives and home loans for home purchases.
Indonesia's economy recorded its lowest growth in 3 years in the first quarter of this year amid the decline in major economic drivers, including household spending, investment, and, of course, exports. Here with us today, we have by Zoom, Bapak David Sumual is the chief economist at Bank Central Asia, and he will talk about the growth potential for the rest of the year. Hello, Pak David.
Hello, Luisa. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, Pak David. Thank you so much for joining Economic Outlook again on a public holiday now. Pak David, Indonesia's economy fell to 4.87% in the first quarter of this year, and this is the lowest quarterly growth in 3 years so far. With the rising global uncertainties, how do you predict that this growth prospect is going to be like for the rest of the year?
Okay, Louisa. Perhaps if we see the latest indicators from the first quarters, actually before the announcement of tariff, yeah, from the reciprocal tariff from Trump administration, actually the economy is already slowing down. So I think the growth prospects are weaker due to ongoing trade war uncertainty. And also there are some domestic problems also, yeah, with regard to the transition and also refocusing of government programs. The growth prospect of all countries in the world actually being revised down by the IMF and some others world multilateral agency other than IMF. And for example, IMF forecasted for this year, previously they forecast 5.1% of economic growth for Indonesia. But they revised it down to only 4.7% of GDP growth in 2025. I think it's one of the catalysts why IMF revised down their projection is because of the Trump's tariff here. So tariff is indirectly also slowing down of Indonesia's growth prospect because of the uncertainty. And also we also expect that it will affect our main export counterpart like China. So we export much of our commodities to China, like coal, CPO, metals, and perhaps there will be a kind of second round effect, yeah, because of the slowing down of demand from US to China's goods, and it will affect raw materials import materials from Indonesia, and also some problems, yeah, domestically, like I mentioned earlier about the transition and refocusing of government programs. There will be kind of time lag, yeah, because right now some government flagship programs like an nutritious meal, for example, it will be the bulk of the spending will only be spent in the third quarter at the earliest. Yeah, so the bulk of the spending will be started in August, yeah, according to the National Nutrition Policy Agency, for example.
Well, it seems like the situation and the confidence of the market is not going to get any better, even that with the tariff implemented, as you mentioned just now, also the trade wars, it seems that the confidence from the market to spend is not getting any better for the next few months. Now, Pak David, the growth of major drivers of economic growth, such as household spending, investment, as well as export, have all declined in this first quarter. In your opinion, what programs now that the government should prioritize to stimulate the economy and perhaps gain back the confidence of the people to start spending to better off the economy?
Yeah, you're right there, Luisa. Household spending actually only grew slightly, yeah, in the first quarter, only around 4.9%. And we see some indications, yeah, even after the Eid Mubarak, actually the spending of the consumer is still low. So this need actually stimulus, yeah, and also increased spending, especially from the government. Because if we see from the household spending, most of their excess liquidity, they put their money only in investment assets, yeah, like for example, government bonds, yeah. So I think increased domestic consumption can mitigate the reduced export demand, yeah, lately, as well as we need more stable demand, yeah, going ahead, and increased spending in disbursement of nutritious meals policy, as I mentioned earlier, is so important because according to the projection of the National Nutrition Agency, the bulk of the spending only will be spent in third quarter of this year. I think we need to speed up the spending, in the flagship program like MBG and also others, And in the time being, I think the spending of the government will be important, for the time being, because the external outlook is not so bright, and also I think we need some stimulus also from the monetary side.
So we need more stimulus for the government to perhaps give confidence for the people. Now, but David, if we can now move on to another issue, which is investment. The government is currently trying to increase investment in order to boost the economic growth. How is the prospect of foreign direct investment in Indonesia this year? Because as we know that our neighboring countries are getting more investments recently rather than us. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think it's the uncertainties that I mentioned earlier also affect the FDI, not only for Indonesia, but also other countries. But before the tariff war, actually, the FDI to the Asian countries quite huge, especially to Malaysia. So we have to also learn much from Malaysia, for example, and also Singapore, how to increase our FDI. And FDI growth, I think in 2025 is likely to slow down compared to 2024, because in the first quarter, if we see the number, it's really low, only 5.6%, compared to about 22% in fourth quarter of 2024. But I think there are some potential catalysts to increase FDI. For example, we learned also lately that the government just form Danantara, Danantara, for example, they just announced that there is a potential investment FDI from Qatar, for example. So we have to guard this kind of MOU, until the implementation, of course, And the government must push also the deregulation in terms of bureaucracy and others, to increase the overall investment. And I think many others. This is an opportunity actually to enhance and also to improve our capabilities to absorb investment, especially FDI. If we want to push our growth to 6 or 8%, the key here is to invite foreign direct investment.
Okay. Final question, Pak David, here. The decline in our government spending also led to the economic slowdown. Now, do you think the government's budget cut will continue to hamper economic growth in the remaining months? Also, to note that the government have earlier banked on a free meal program, or MBG, to boost the economy in regions. In your opinion, if you can just give a conclusion about how our government is doing at the moment, and in short, just what can our government do to improve our economy in the short run?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we have some flagship product program like the nutritious meal. I think we have to prepare also the infrastructure on the ground first, because this is a big amount of money, and also as a big project, to be implemented. I think the preparation is really important here. And we know that recently the government just reversed the frozen funds for some sectors that, of course, already affected some major sectors that being frozen lately. And I think the spending of the government already getting stronger, in April, in May, and we hope that it will be even faster, in the months ahead. So we don't know. We still see uncertainty, with regard to the external conditions. So that's why the implementation and the speed of the implementation of flagship programs will be very important, and how to invite and how to improve the environment, investment environment in Indonesia will be the key, to increase growth in the second and third quarter, Loisa.
All right. Bapak David Sumual, Chief Economist of Bank Central Asia. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge here on Economic Outlook, and happy Vesak Day to you. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.